You are listening to The Place We Find Ourselves, the podcast where we not only talk about all things related to story, trauma, and therapy, but also have the privilege of often hearing some of the sacred real-life stories of interview guests. I'm Adam Young, and this is Episode 5, Attachment, What It Is and Why It Matters. Okay, today we are going to talk about attachment, a very, very important subject. Attachment refers to, at its most basic level, the manner in which you connect with other people. It's the emotional bond that you develop with the people you are closest to, the people who are there for you, the people who truly know you. We are biologically driven to attach to others in order to survive. When we perceive threat or danger, we're hardwired to seek protection from and maintain proximity to someone who will be there for us and who truly knows us. Now, why is attachment so important? Well, the short answer is because we're created in the image of a triune God, a we and not an I. This makes us highly relational creatures. And anytime we're talking about relationship, we're talking about connection. Attachment really refers to the manner in which you connect with others. As a result of your relationship with your primary caregiver, you either developed a secure attachment or an insecure attachment. And we'll talk about both of those in a moment. But I just want to give the following definition of a secure attachment. If you boil it all down, secure attachment is simply this. When there is relational rupture, the securely attached individual knows that repair is inevitable and it will be here shortly. In other words, secure attachment is embodied hope. It is the bodily based expectation that we will soon feel close and connected again, and it will come about without either one of us having to sacrifice our individuality. That's the core of secure attachment. Now, as we begin to talk about what is meant by insecure attachment, let me begin by saying that one of the people that has taught me a lot about attachment is a neuroscientist named Allan Schore. And a lot of the material in this episode comes from Shore's outstanding book entitled The Science of the Art of Psychotherapy. Allan Schore is a clinician, a neuroscientist, a therapist who's done a ton of work on how our brains develop as a result of the degree to which we attach securely or not to our primary caregiver. And so he has done so much work in the area of attachment and neurobiology, and particularly with regard to the first year of your life. So let's talk about the first year of your life for a minute. On one level, every one of us knows that we were once an infant. But on another level, have you ever really considered what the first year of your life might have been like? The first year of your life arguably had more influence on how you think and feel today than any other year of your life. Allan Schore puts it like this: the essential task of the first year of life was the creation of a secure attachment bond of emotional communication between you and your mom. The way a secure attachment develops is through the process of attunement. Now, attunement refers to mom's ability to read what's going on for her child internally. By looking into his eyes and becoming attuned to his inner states, a mother can reliably intuit, sense her baby's feelings and needs. The reason a mother has the ability to do this is because her brain is equipped with mirror neurons, And mirror neurons are what allow you to read someone's face, their facial expression, to read their tone of voice, and to begin to feel in your body what they are feeling. This, of course, is the basis of empathy. This is empathy. Mirror neurons are why we have the ability to empathize. So when you are listening to somebody tell a story of sadness or to recount something that happened in their day when they were scared and they begin to feel fear as they're talking about it, you read their facial expression, you read their tone of voice, and it is these mirror neurons in your brain that allow you to begin to feel the fear that they are feeling in their body as they tell the story. And so a mother uses her mirror neurons to get a sense of what her baby may be feeling, experiencing, needing. And that process is known as attunement. Now, what happens when the parent, for whatever reason, is not attuned to the child's shifting feelings and shifting internal states? What happens when mom isn't attuned to the fact that her child is hungry and wants food, or is tired and needs to be lulled to sleep, or is bored and needs stimulation and engagement? What happens if mom is depressed or has anxiety at a level that distracts her from attuning to her child? A parent that is overwhelmed by their own emotions or pain or trauma cannot attune very well or very often to an infant. And if lack of attunement occurs often enough, and if it is not quickly repaired by reattunement, the result is an insecure attachment. So it's important to understand that a healthy, secure attachment is not a function of how much time you spend with a child. Healthy attachment does not equal time spent with the child. Securely attached children are not necessarily the infants who were taken up into their mother's arms the most frequently or held the longest, or the children who had parents who played with them the most frequently. Securely attached children are the ones who are hugged when they want to be hugged, and they're put down when they want to be put down. In other words, attachment is a function of the degree to which the parent is able to read what the child needs and wants, and then the parent responds to that. Whenever a mother senses her baby's inarticulate desires and acts on them, the results are a secure child. This is what every child is looking for. Does my mother sense my emotional needs and act on them? Now, one way a baby knows that mom is sensing my needs and responding to me is because when the baby is hungry, he or she ends up getting fed. When they are tired, they are lulled to sleep, etc. But far more than just needing to be put to sleep or to be fed, babies need to know that their mothers are interacting with them facially. In other words, babies they sense the degree of attunement from their mom by continuously monitoring their mother's facial expressions. There is a very famous experiment that you can go on YouTube and watch. It's hard to watch, but it's only about 3 minutes. And it's called the still face experiment. And in the still face experiment, there is a mother and a 1-year-old child just sitting across from each other. And the mom is looking into her baby's eyes and making facial expressions and smiling and making cooing noises. And the baby, of course, is responding. And there's interactive kind of exchange of facial expressions. And there's nonverbal communication. After a little bit of that, the mom turns her head away, and when she brings her head back around, her face is flat. It's frozen. It's not expressive, and she just maintains It's not a mean look. It's not an angry look. It's just a blank face. And you watch how the baby responds to this face. In moments, the baby is attempting to get the mom to begin to respond again. And so the baby will do various things with its face, with its voice, to try and get a response from the mom. As the baby gets increasingly frustrated, it begins to panic, really. And eventually, if the experiment were to continue, because they end it, the mother reattunes the child. Her face shows up again. She's expressive again. She's interacting with the child, and the child is immediately soothed, and things go back to normal. But if the still face were to remain longer, eventually the baby would shut down completely. And so this experiment shows so vividly that what the baby needs is the mother's attunement non-verbally. The baby needs to know that the mom is actively engaged with and reading the facial expressions and the tones of the baby's voice and interacting with them accordingly. Another experiment that gets at this same point: imagine a double video camera setup in which mom and baby can both see each other, but they're not face to face. Each sees the other in their respective monitors. And in real time, mom and baby are looking at each other, and they're smiling and laughing, and both are perfectly fine, just like with the still face experiment, except they're looking through video monitors. Now, if the baby sees a videotape of his mother's face, if suddenly the live feed is switched to a videotape of mom's face that's, let's just say, is off by 20 seconds, instead of the real-time display, the baby will quickly become very distraught, because it isn't just his mom's countenance and his mom's face and even his mom's smile that he needs. What he needs is her synchrony. He needs their mutually responsive interaction. He needs, in a word, attunement. This is the core of attunement. So you restore mom's face in real time to his TV monitor, and the baby's contentment returns because attunement has returned. So healthy, secure attachment is a function of attunement. And here's the third word that you need to have in mind. And easily they all begin with A. And the word, or its two words, is affect regulation. We can't talk about attachment without talking about affect regulation. Allan Schore, again, has demonstrated that these are essentially interchangeable terms. Attachment, attunement, affect regulation. Now, what is affect regulation? Well, affect refers to your internal emotional state. It's the felt sense of what is happening in your body. It ranges from numb and shut down, a 1, to terrified and panicked, which would be a 10. Whenever you are stressed, your affect is said to be dysregulated. Regulated affect is in the 5 to 6 range. And so when your affect is regulated, you have a sense of peace, of calm, of alertness. There's a slight feeling of excitement. You're alert. You're present. If you begin to shut down and go numb, it's like going from 4 down to 3, down to 2, and completely numb and shut down is 1. If, on the other hand, you begin to get anxious, and that anxiety leads to a sense of panic and then sheer terror, you're moving from 6 up to 7, 8, 9, and eventually 10. So both the low of 1 and the high of 10 are dysregulated states. Now, here's the thing. As a child, you had very limited ability to regulate your own affect. And as an infant, you had no ability to do so. The infant is utterly dependent on their mother's ability to regulate their affect for them. So when your body went into a dysregulated state as an infant, you needed mom to soothe you. When you were anxious and scared, you needed her to calm you, to bring soothing and care to your body so that your affect would go from an 8 or a 9 back down to that safe, secure, comfortable range of 5 to 6. And conversely, when you were numb and shut down, you needed your mom to stimulate you to bring your affect back up to a 5 or a 6. If you had a secure attachment to your mother, you currently know how to regulate your affect. If you didn't, then you never learned how to regulate your affect, and affect regulation as a result will be difficult for you. So, in moments of stress, because affect regulation is always about what happens to your body in moments of stress. In moments of stress, particularly interpersonal stress, relational stress, when you're having a fight with somebody that you're close to, in those moments, are you able to maintain a sense of calm, a sense of being present, an ability to, the language we use is be in your right mind? Are you able to maintain a non-anxious presence when there is conflict interpersonally and you experience distress? Or does your body, and this is utterly unconscious, does your body automatically seem to quickly either shut down and go numb or amp up and get anxious and panicked? Physiologically, this means in the case of amping up, which is called hyper-arousal, that your heartbeat increases, your blood pressure increases, your breathing changes. If you can attune to your body in those moments and check in with yourself, you will realize my heart is beating faster. My blood pressure is up. My breathing has changed. And conversely, if you tend in moments of stress to go towards the 1 and 2 range of the scale, that's called hypoarousal. The physiological correlates of that is a slowing of the heart rate, a slowing of your breathing, a decrease in blood pressure, and it is just this sense of the life draining out of your body. Affect regulation for an infant happens by the mother sensing the child's dysregulated affect, dysregulated arousal, and then regulating it herself by interacting non-verbally with the child. Here's how Allan Schore puts it. When the parent and child are looking at each other, the attuned, sensitive caregiver appraises nonverbal expressions of the infant's arousal and then regulates that arousal. In other words, emotion is initially regulated by another person. Emotion, affect, physiological state of arousal is initially regulated by another person. And again, this makes all the sense in the world, given the fact that we are created in the image of a triune God. We are not individuals. I mean, bodily speaking, you couldn't be further from an individual system. Your immune system is regulated by the other people in the room. Your breathing is regulated and affected by the other people in the room. This is why, by the way, you enjoy watching movies in a theater or with other people more than watching movies by yourself, because something is happening in what's called the social synapse, the space between you and another person. Their excitement is feeding your excitement, and your excitement is feeding their excitement, and their enjoyment of something beautiful is enhancing your enjoyment of the same beauty. And so, created in the image of a we and not an I, we find ourselves as creatures who are regulated by one another. And nowhere is this more true than in the first year of your life, first couple of years of your life, when your affect is completely dependent on your mother's ability to regulate it. So when you hear the word attachment, keep these other two words in mind: attunement and affect regulation. So far, we have largely been talking about these categories as just that, categories, as constructs. So we've been talking about the concept of attachment, the concept of attunement. What I want to focus in on right now is that these words hit the ground with neurobiological changes in the brain. In other words, profound neurobiological things happen in your brain physically when you are attaching either securely or insecurely to your mother. So what happens neurologically when the mother comes through, when mom reads the child well? What happens in the child's brain? A number of things, but here are some of the most important. Number one, descending fibers from the prefrontal cortex, which is the portion of the brain kind of right at your forehead. Descending fibers from that portion of your brain are constructed down to your amygdala, down to your limbic brain. And what these descending networks allow the child to do is to regulate their amygdala, which is the portion of the brain that's responsible for fight flight, to regulate the amygdala, to soothe the amygdala when it gets freaked out. So remember when I said if in moments of distress, interpersonal distress, you get dysregulated, that is because your brain lacks strong, thick neural networks between your prefrontal cortex and your amygdala, and therefore you have very limited capacity to self-regulate. And so these somewhat abstract concepts of attachments and attunement, they have profound neurobiological, which is to say physical, manifestations in your brain. And I hope this brings you some measure of compassion for your own self when you find yourself dysregulated and unable to regulate yourself. This is not a matter of willpower. Your brain, if you are unable to regulate yourself in states of interpersonal stress, in a fight with someone close to you, then it is because your brain is fundamentally different than the brain of someone that can bring regulation to a momentarily dysregulated, stressed out state. Everyone gets dysregulated in moments of stress. However, securely attached individuals are promptly able to ground themselves again, to soothe themselves again, to calm themselves again, so that they can respond from their true self, from their core. An important implication from all this is that when you experience moments of intense stress, i.e. trauma, the individual who has the ability to regulate their affect well is going to be significantly less impacted by that trauma, i.e. less traumatized, than the person who lacks the ability to regulate their affect. In other words, attachment sets you up for how you experience future trauma. It sets your capacity, if you will, to endure trauma. It sets you up for how future trauma will impact your brain. Attachment is so important because it determines the degree to which you will be able to regulate your own affect, which in turn determines the degree to which you will be affected by traumatic, harmful, stressful, tragic events in your future. Briefly, there's one more, at least, reason that attachment matters so much. And here it is. Attachment determines who you will tend to form close relationships with. A baby strives to tune into his parents, but a baby has no ability to judge whether his parents are healthy, whether they are benevolent, whether their heart towards the baby is good or not. The baby will attach to whoever is there. And so a child in need will gravitate toward the child's mother's face and run to her whether she is kind or not. When the baby grows up, as you mature, you will prefer the emotional feel of your relationship with your mother, regardless of how healthy that relationship was. You will lean toward what was true for you as an infant, as a child. And so the closer that a potential mate matches what you have known, what you were familiar with, the more attracted you will be, the more enticed you will be, the more entranced you will be. The more you will feel that, oh, this is home, this makes sense, this is where I belong. So you choose who to become close with, both spouses and close friends, based on how you attached to your primary caregiver as an infant, as a child. Now, how do you know if you developed a secure attachment? Well, in the next episode, I am going to talk about the two primary forms of insecure attachment, which are called avoidant attachment and ambivalent attachment. And you can listen to that podcast and see if you identify with either one of those. But another way of finding out if you are securely attached is to reflect back on your family environment, on your growing up years, and see if the following 6 things were true for you. Each child needs 6 things from their parents to form a healthy attachment. And here are the 6 things. Number 1, you needed attunement. We've already talked about that. Number 2, you needed responsiveness. In other words, it wasn't enough for your mother to be attuned to you. You also needed her to respond to what she read when she was attuned to you. Number 3, you needed engagement. That is pursuit. You needed your parents to pursue your heart with a genuine desire to know you. Number 4, affect regulation. You needed a parent who had the ability to regulate your arousal, regulate your affect. Number 5, you needed your parents to be able to tolerate and even welcome your so-called negative emotions, fear, sadness, anger. Those things needed to be allowed in your home. You needed to know that you could feel those things and it was going to be okay. There wouldn't be negative relational consequences for you. And number 6, you needed your parents to be able to own when they failed you, to acknowledge it, and to seek to rectify whatever harm they did. So that's a brief overview of your story and the importance of attachment. If you would like a 5-page document that summarizes what I've said today about attachment, you can go to adamyoungcounseling.com/attachment and get it. I hope it's useful to you. Distribute it to friends, clients, whomever. adamyoungcounseling.com/attachment. Thanks for listening to The Place We Find Ourselves. Music for this podcast was provided by Rick Wilson. Visit adamyoungcounseling.com/podcast and you can subscribe to future episodes. And please share this podcast with those who you think may be interested in its content. Thanks very much, and until next time.